for joining me for Just a Thought. I'm going to be in Galatians chapter 5 and verse 17. There we read, "For the flesh lusts against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh." What we must realize is that we're dual beings. We're both spirit and flesh. And that's not true of God. God is spirit. We'll see that here in just a moment. But to point out that we are dual beings, in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7 we read, "And the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being." We also see that he is spirit specifically, although this idea of breathing into his nostrils the breath of life would be that that's giving him his spirit. We see in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 27, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them." And so we see in John chapter 4 and verse 24, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. So God is spirit, and that's the likeness in which we are made in his image. And but we are of the flesh. Notice in Genesis chapter 3 and verse 19. "And this is the curse upon man. In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground. For out of it," that is out of the ground, "you were taken, for dust you are, and dust you shall return." And so the flesh is going to turn back to dust from which it came. The spirit of man is going to return back to God, to whom it was given. Or from where it came, I should say. Notice in Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse verse 7. Ecclesiastes 12 and verse 7. "Then the dust will return to the earth as it was," talking about the body, "and the spirit return to God who gave it." So we are dual beings. We are made up of both spirit and flesh. The spirit is who we really are, you might say. It's our characteristics. It is our soul, our spirit. And the flesh is just a tent, as Peter put it. It is just a house for the spirit, for the soul of man. In 1 John chapter 2 and verse 16, "For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world." And we're given a little bit of an insight in regard to this idea of carnal things, carnal, fleshly, worldly things. And so as we go through this text, we're going to see here in Galatians chapter 5 that there are works of the flesh. There are things that are done by the flesh. They are worldly, carnal. They're temporal. They are of an evil nature compared to that of the Spirit. Because that's exactly what we're dealing with here. Remember back in verse 16, "I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary to one another, so that you do not do the things that you wish." And so we're going to take a look at that phrase tomorrow. I encourage you to come back and view the vlog. And we will be covering, "And these are contrary to one another, so that you do not do the things that you wish." Why is that? Why don't we do what we wish or what we would want to do? What's the conflict? What's the problem there? And so we will be dealing with that tomorrow. Come back and I hope that you will find something beneficial in the study.